get-go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
Mr. Lightoller, I would like to know if Mr. Boxhall, the fourth officer of the Titanic, is present.
He is not here, sir. He is in bed.
I want to know officially that he is. Can you give any announcement as to Mr. Boxhall?
He's still sick in bed, Mr. Chairman.
Unable to be present this morning?
He cannot be here today. We hope he will be able to come tomorrow or the next day at the latest.
Officer Lightoller, you know of the illness of Mr. Boxhall?
Yes, sir.
Your fellow officer?
Yes, sir.
You've seen him this morning?
Yes, sir.
And you say he is unable to respond to the call of the committee this morning?
As far as I know from the doctors, yes, sir.
Okay, that is all. I shall like to have Mr. Marconi take the stand. You were sworn in New York last week, Mr. Marconi?
I was not sworn, Senator.
I shall swear you this morning with your consent.
Certainly, Senator.
Okay, Mr. Marconi was duly sworn by the chairman. In order that we may have it in the record, your official status, will you kindly state who you are, where you live, and your business?
Guillermo Marconi, permanent residence, London, England. Chief Engineer and Chairman of Marconi's Wireless Telegraph Company Limited of London, England.
As such officer of the English company, what have you to do with the equipment of wireless apparatus on ocean vessels or shore stations? And what have you to do with the selection of operators in that work?
I am consulted with regard to all technical details concerning the apparatus installed on ships generally, though I am not consulted with regard to the equipment of each particular ship. Concerning the business arrangements made with ship owners, I'm usually not in thorough touch with what is going on for the reason that I'm usually occupied with technical work. I travel about the world a great deal in order to carry on experiments and to inspect plants in various countries. For the business details and for general management of the company, there is a managing director or general manager who attends to all the work of engaging operators and of negotiating with ship owners and others for the use of wireless telegraphy.
And who is that man?
Mr. Godfrey C. Isaacs.
And where does he reside?
He resides in London. He left New York just before the accident.
Just before the Titanic accident?
Yes, just before the Titanic accident.
Mr. Marconi, what is your official relationship to the British government, if any?
I have no official relationship with the British government, except that I am called upon by them to advise them in matters of wireless telegraphy, generally, and also I have undertaken to be responsible for the design of the long-distance stations which they are erecting in various parts of the British Empire, in which my company will be interested for a period of at least 18 years.
Under special contract with the British government?
Yes, under special contract with the British government.
Under what department of the British government is the work of wireless telegraphy undertaken?
It is under the control of the British Post Office, the same department that controls the telegraph landlines of the United Kingdom.
And are you frequently brought in contact with the head of the Post Office Department of England?
Very frequently.
Is he the officer of the British government who made this contract to which you refer?
He is the officer responsible for it, who signed it, but the contract, I should explain, is still subject to the approval of Parliament.
Is this an exclusive contract?
I do not follow what you mean.
Is this an exclusive contract?
You mean a contract
I
only?
mean a contract that can only be made with you.
For this particular purpose, it's an exclusive contract.
And it runs for a period of 18 years.
It runs over a period of 28 years, but the government has the right to terminate it on certain conditions after 18 years.
Will you state to the committee in general terms the scope of that contract? I do not mean now to go into the exact details. I mean as to whether that contract requires you to install your apparatus and supervise its operation and management, or whether you receive compensation by an agreement which permits the management to fall under the control of the British officials.
This contract provides that within a certain period of time, I think it is 2 years, we shall erect these stations for the government of England in Cyprus, Egypt, India, and South Africa, Singapore, and other places where the government may decide to erect them. We are paid a certain lump sum per station for the expense of erection, and the station, before being accepted by the government, has to satisfy certain requirements in regard to speed of transmission, effectiveness, and reliability.
Does this contract cover any charge made for you or made by you for the use of patented devices?
It does, and if I may explain, a sum which should represent some manufacturing profit payable, I think, partly before and partly on the completion of each plant. My company has to run each station for 6 months on behalf of the government. After 6 months, the government takes over the station, and for a period of 28 years, the government pays to my company 10% of the receipts at each station and pays all expenses.
Are these gross receipts from government businesses as well as commercial business?
From all businesses. But they can terminate this agreement in 18 years if they do not want to use any of my patented inventions. If you will allow me to volunteer, we have another contract in regard to ship and shore stations in England. These are long-distance stations and are generally intended for communication between country and country, more than for communication between shore and ship.
Oh, have you the exclusive right to equip the public or governmental stations of Great Britain with your system of wireless telegraphy?
We have that right insofar as the courts uphold under the patents under which wireless telegraphy is worked in England. We have some particular arrangements with the government also.
Have you any contract of a similar character with the government of Germany?
We have not.
Have you had?
No, we have not.
And have you had any dealings with the government of the German Empire?
We have had some dealings with the government of Germany. We have equipped light ships for them. During recent years, we have come to an agreement with the German company to work wireless telegraphy jointly on ships of the German Mercantile Marine. This company is now in operation and is fitting German ships generally.
And works in harmony with your appliances?
Works in harmony with us. We have a partition of the receipts, of the profits.
Have you any contract of character similar to the one with the British government and the German government, which you have just described, with any other countries of the world?
We have an exclusive contract with the government of Italy. At least I should say that I have.
You personally?
Yes, personally.
What kind of contract is that?
In consideration of not being charged for patent rights in regard to the use of the system they undertake to equip their shore stations and their colonies with my apparatus and use it exclusively for commercial purposes, being free for war and navy purposes to use anything they like.
Is that the only other government with which you or your companies have any contract of that kind?
No, there are several other governments. There is the government of the Dominion of Canada, with which we have a very comprehensive contract as regards to ship stations on the North Atlantic coast, on the island of Newfoundland, up the St. Lawrence, and also as regards the station for communicating direct with England across the Atlantic. I'm not acquainted with the details of this contract, but I do think it is an important contract.
With whom was it made, the Canadian officials or the British officials?
It was made with the Canadian government.
And it runs over a period of years?
It runs over a period of years, a considerable period of years, I should say, over 10 years at least.
Is it now in force?
It is now in force.
Have you constructed these stations?
We have constructed a large proportion of them.
As I understand, all these arrangements that you have detailed are now in force?
They are now in force so far as I know.
With what other countries have you contracts?
We have an exclusive contract with the government of Newfoundland in regard to the stations on the coast of Newfoundland, and that contract has a number of years to run.
Have you established stations up there?
We have a number of stations up there.
And where are they located?
One north of St. John's, one at Cape Race, one on the Belle Isle Straits, one at Cape Ray, and one or two others, the location of which I do not remember.
What type of apparatus is installed in the Cape Race office?
I should call it a type of ship long-distance apparatus.
And how far can you send the messages with accuracy from that station?
From that station to a properly equipped ship, I should say we could send messages with accuracy over 400 or 500 miles during the daytime, and probably considerably over 1,000 miles during the nighttime.
To a ship equipped like the Titanic, could the apparatus at Cape Race operate for a long distance and with accuracy?
Yes, sir. With the Titanic, I should say it would do about its best.
How about the Carpathia?
With the Carpathia, it would be good for a smaller distance, but I certainly think over 300 miles in the daytime.
To a ship like the Olympic?
It would do as well as it would with the Titanic.
At night, you could communicate with the Olympic from Cape Race how far?
I should say, as a general rule, 1,200 or 1,500 miles.
Do you know with what apparatus the vessel Frankfurt of the North German Lloyd Line is equipped?
I do not know exactly with what it is equipped, but I think it is equipped with an efficient apparatus because they are very careful what they put on board.
The Germans are?
Yes.
What is the wireless equipment of the steamship Californian?
I'm not aware of the exact type of apparatus. I think it's a medium-distance apparatus.
Do you know of a Canadian vessel of the Canadian Pacific Railway called the Mount Temple?
I've heard of her.
Do you know how she is equipped with wireless?
I think she is equipped with a medium or short-distance apparatus.
In that event, how far could she communicate accurately?
200 miles.
By day or night?
By day.
How far by night?
Probably 500 or 600 miles by night, but not very often.
Do you regard the Cape Race station as one of the best stations you have on the coast of Newfoundland?
I regard it as a good station. It must be remembered that it was equipped several years ago and that the improvements in wireless have been made very rapid lately.
How did you happen to put a station at Cape Race?
Because the Canadian government, the Newfoundland government, and the ship owners who use the St. Lawrence route were very anxious to have a station there, and also the transatlantic New York to Liverpool interests.
Why were they anxious?
Because it would be useful for them in communicating information in regard to where they were, in regard to fogs, and in regard to ice.
Do you know the position of the Titanic in the North Atlantic when she sank?
I read of her position, and it has been pointed out to me. I do not remember the actual position in degrees and minutes.
Have you any means of telling how far the Titanic was from your Cape Race station?
I have no direct means of telling.
Have you any impression that the Cape Race station would be the natural coast station to pick up the messages from the Titanic?
I think so. I would prefer to have my memory refreshed as to the exact position.
41 degrees 46 north, 50 degrees 14 west?
Yes, I think Cape Race would be the best station.
That would be the natural station to pick up the communications from a ship located about the place where the Titanic sank?
Yes.
What is the greatest distance over which you have ever successfully operated your wireless telegraphy?
You mean between ship and shore?
No, between coast and coast.
From Clifton in Ireland to Buenos Aires in South America.
I did not understand the other day in New York what the distance was from Ireland at the point you speak of to the Argentine where this message was received.
It is approximately 6,000 miles. I would not say exactly that. It may be 5,900 or 6,100.
And I think you said the other day that on the coast of Brazil there were huge mountains that, if they influenced this work, failed to destroy it on that test?
Yes, they did not seem to interfere with the transmission of the electric waves.
Did you send a message yourself?
I received a message myself.
You were at the Ireland office?
No, I was on shore in the Argentine.
You were in the Argentine?
Yes, and my other people were in Ireland. If you will allow me, I should state that this is the greatest distance recorded that I know of in my experience. At the same time, it was not a distance over which, with that plant, you could carry out a satisfactory communication. I mean, we would get messages at certain times when the conditions in the space over this great distance were favorable, and at other times we would get nothing. It was not a reliable connection.
When you got nothing, did you think that the message had been intercepted?
No, I did not.
At sea or other shore stations?
They had been absorbed in the atmosphere. Another station cannot intercept them so as to stop them. They can only get a copy.
Did you receive from any intermediate station, on land or on sea, confirmation that these wireless messages that were sent from Ireland?
No. No. I only had the confirmation of the operators who sent them in Ireland.
How long after a message was sent from Ireland was it received in the Argentine?
The actual signs of the messages were received immediately.
How much later?
Theoretically, it should take, for 6,000 miles, 1/20th or 1/25th of a second. I did not measure it, but it did seem instantaneous.
That is, it was received within a minute?
Well, yes, under a minute, 1/20th of a second. It traveled with the same speed as light, I should say. I was sure that the message came from Ireland because I got a personal message from a friend of mine who was visiting the station in Ireland that day. I mean, I checked it afterward. I knew he had been there only on that day.
What wavelength was used in that test?
About 23,000 or 24,000 feet. I should think about 800 meters over 8,000 meters over 7,000 meters.
You have given the name of the manager of your company in England who has to do with the employment of operators. Have you a manager who answers to that description in America?
Yes, I have.
And what is his name?
Mr. John Bottomley.
Is Mr. Bottomley here?
Mr. Bottomley is not here, although there is the president of the American company, Governor John W. Griggs of New Jersey.
Oh, what authority has Mr. Bottomley?
He is secretary and manager of the American Marconi company.
And who is the officer next in rank in your American company?
Mr. DeSousa.
And what is his position?
He is treasurer.
Does he live in New York?
He lives in New York.
Who is the next officer?
Next to him is Mr. Sammis.
Oh, what is his position?
His position is that of chief engineer of the American Marconi company, and I should say that he is very intimately in touch within everything concerning the equipment of ships and the operators.
He is very intimately in touch with the equipment of ships and the operators.
Yes, and the operation of the system.
And where does he reside?
He resides in New York. All are at 27 William Street.
Is Mr. Sammis here?
Mr. Sammis is not here.
You gave Mr. Sammis's initials?
I did not. I do not know them. L. Sammis, I think, is his name.
And his address is New York?
Number 27 William Street, New York. We will furnish these names and addresses if you'd like.
I would like to have the roster of the Marconi Company officers in America. Do you also keep a detailed roster of the operators?
Yes.
I would like that also.
I know that the American company keeps a register of its own operators. I do not know that they have a register of all the operators of all the other companies which have operators on ships that come to New York. I could get a complete list of them in a short time.
Were you present at the so-called Berlin Convention held in Berlin, Germany 2 years ago?
I was not present.
Are you working under the terms of that convention, so far as your work is carried out in England, in Germany, in Italy, and in these other countries?
In England, Spain, and France, yes. In Italy, no, because Italy has not joined the conventions.
Oh, Italy is not a member of that convention?
Italy is not yet a member.
And the United States is not yet a member?
The United States is not yet a member.
In order that the record may show we are not unaware of its present status, the convention has been ratified, I believe, by the Senate, and the ratifications have not yet been exchanged?
That is my understanding.
I want to know if you can tell me, who was the first practical operator of wireless telegraphy covering long distance?
May I ask what you mean by long distances?
I mean a distance that would require over 300 meters wavelengths to communicate.
300 meters in wavelengths?
Yes.
I think it was myself in England.
In what year?
1896 and 1897. I carried on tests for the Army and for the Navy.
What were the circumstances surrounding those tests?
I offered to demonstrate...
Wait, have you been an operator before?
No, I had not. I had not been an operator at that time. I took an interest in electrical subjects generally. I had studied a great deal. I was what I might rightly describe as an amateur.
If you can state briefly, I would like the record to disclose it.
I first carried out some tests in Italy with the electrical waves, which, at that time in 1895, were well known. By a modification of the apparatus, the distance over which these waves could be sent and received was suddenly greatly increased. The change was in the practical apparatus for producing waves. It was easy to send them from 20 to 30 yards. I invented an apparatus which made them apparent, or made it possible to detect them, over 2 or 3 miles. That was, at the time, considered very interesting. After that, I came to England, where I had numerous relations, and I offered to demonstrate this new idea to the British Post Office, the Army, and the Navy, and to Lloyd's. They were very greatly interested in this system, and tests were carried out, and communication was very shortly established over 9 miles. Tests were carried out. The first British ship that was fitted was a yacht belonging to the late King Edward, and several warships belonging to the British Navy and the Italian Navy. The system worked very well up to a limited distance. It was nowhere near as reliable as it is now. After a certain space of time, in 1899 and 1900, some further improvements were perfected by myself and some others, which greatly increased the range and made it apparent at once that it would be possible to communicate over thousands of miles, and steps were taken for the installation of stations to carry out tests to show if it were possible. If you will allow me to state, the first tests in America were carried out by myself in 1899, at which time I also carried out experiments on battleships of the United States Navy. the New York and the Massachusetts. Communication was established, I think, up to 20 or 25 miles, something like that at that time.
Mr. Marconi, all of these experiments finally eventuated in your ability to communicate messages over about 6,000 miles with accuracy, as you have described?
Yes, although I think that at present the useful, reliable range is something like 3,000 miles.
Has science continued to improve the method? Has the method been improved recently?
It has been improved recently, and it is continuing to be improved.
All the time?
All the time.
What do you ultimately expect of it?
I expect it will be one of the principal means or methods for communicating between distant parts of the world. I am not quite so certain at present whether it may be useful for communication between places of short distances from each other, say like New York and Brooklyn or Jersey City. I think wires would be better there, but for communication, say between New York and England, or between New York and San Francisco, or between Chicago and another distant place, I think that with the increase of speed and the understanding of electricity, it will someday become the chief means of communication.
Have you any idea that this system will be substituted for the telegraph in the operation of railroad trains?
It may be in some cases. I'm not quite certain of that. That is looking, of course, very much into the future.
I would like to know whether, in the receipt of a wireless message from shore to ship, or from ship to ship, or from ship to shore, there's any noise or alarm accompanying the message through which an operator sitting near would be apprised of the coming of the message?
In the older apparatus that was fitted on ships 6 or 7 years ago, there was an arrangement which rang a bell and gave an alarm when the ship was called. This apparatus, however, had the disadvantages of only working over a very limited distance and of being unreliable. I mean to say that sometimes it would not act, and at other times it would give false calls. It would be affected by natural effects or the electricity of the atmosphere, and it would ring up the operator at night for nothing.
Let me see if I understand you. A message, perhaps not intended for the ship Titanic, for instance, if sent from the Cape Race station, if the apparatus on ships had an alarm device, would alarm every ship within the radius of that message as well as the one for which it was intended?
Yes, that is exactly so.
And there is no reliance to be placed upon the warning signal?
At present there is not. Of course, it may be possible to devise something.
If the operator was not at his apparatus with the telephone upon his head, he would be unable to detect the message or the fact that he was being called. Is that right?
That is right. There is no reliable means at present that will enable him to do so.
Then a ship at sea, equipped for wireless telegraphy, if it is to be serviceable in an emergency, should have an operator all the time on duty, should it not?
Yes, sir. I should add the words, if it is to be serviceable to others in distress.
If it is to be serviceable to others.
Yes, because in case of an accident to itself, it can always call its operator and ask him to call for assistance, to ask for assistance.
The Carpathia had but one operator.
Yes, only one operator.
And how many operators are there on the Californian?
I believe there's only one, but I'm not certain.
Do you know how many operators there are on the Mount Temple, the Canadian boat?
Only one, I believe.
And the Frankfurt?
I do not know as to the Frankfurt because it belongs to a company with which I am not in close touch.
Not being advised of the intention of any shore or ship station to communicate with another ship at specified minutes or hours previously arranged, a call might be made for assistance, like a distress call, CQD, and not heard or taken at all unless the operator happened at that moment to be at his apparatus?
That is a fact.
What is the pay of a wireless operator, generally speaking, in this country?
I'm not aware of the exact pay in this country.
What is it in England?
In England, it is from, I should say, beginning at $4 a week to $10 or $12 a week, with board and lodging. Of course, you have not asked me this, but I might say it's fairly easy to get operators on those terms in England because it's a rate of pay which is considerably higher than what they get on the shore telegraphs. And of course, the fact of going to sea is very attractive to a great number of young men.
The hazard does not seem to deter them from that service?
No, it does not.
Can you give the wages of the wireless operators in America?
I cannot give them accurately. I know that they are slightly higher than the wages in England.
Was the wireless operator on the Carpathia employed in England or America?
He was employed in England.
Was Mr. Bride, who survived the Titanic disaster, employed in England or in America?
He was employed in England.
And the same is true of Mr. Phillips, who perished?
The same is true of Mr. Phillips.
Do you know Mr. Bride?
I have known him since the accident.
Only since then?
Only since then.
And where is he now?
He is in New York.
And what is his physical condition?
He is still suffering from injuries to his ankles. He is ready to come here whenever he is required, but it was thought that until you asked for him, he might remain where he is in an endeavor to get well.
Do you know Mr. Cottam, the wireless operator of the Carpathia?
I do, but I have only met him since the accident to the Titanic.
Where were you on Sunday, April 14th last?
I was in New York.
And where were you on Monday following?
I was also in New York City.
Did you have any communication personally or by your orders with the Carpathia on Sunday night or Monday?
No, I had none whatever.
Did you have any communication with Cape Ray Station?
No, sir.
On Sunday or Monday?
No.
Did you have any communication with Carpathia directly or through a ship or coast station on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday up to the time of the arrival of the Carpathia in New York?
I had no direct communication with the Carpathia. I telephoned my office at frequent intervals.
On what days?
On all of those days, and I stated that I was very anxious to obtain information of what had happened, and if there was any means of getting it...
To whom did you telephone?
Excuse me, I telephoned to Mr. Bottomley, the manager of the American company.
Did you telephone to anybody else?
Not that I remember. Somebody else may have answered me, Mr. Sammis, I think. Numerous newspapers telephoned to me.
And you telephoned to Mr. Bottomley and possibly to Mr. Sammis?
Yes.
Did you get any information from them?
I got no information except I think it was on Monday evening.
At what time?
About 6:45.
And what information was that?
The information was that the Titanic had sunk with a very heavy loss of life.
That was about 7:30 o'clock?
Between 7 and 8 o'clock.
Between 7 and 8 o'clock Monday evening, the 15th of April.
Yes, I believe it was then.
Who communicated that fact to you?
Mr. Bottomley communicated that fact to my secretary.
Oh, and your secretary communicated it to you?
Yes, my secretary communicated it to me.
Oh. That was the first information you received from any officer or employee of your company anywhere?
Anywhere.
And what did you do when you got that information?
I did not do anything. I was exceedingly surprised and shocked at the news. It seemed to me almost impossible.
Did you communicate the information to the White Star Line?
I did not, because I was told that the White Star Line was already informed.
When were you told that?
I was told that at the same time.
That evening?
That evening. I was told that the White Star Line was aware of the fact. I communicated it to some friends of mine that I met.
Did you hear anything after Monday evening between 7 and 8 o'clock from any of your officers or from any ship or shore station regarding the loss of the Titanic up to Thursday evening?
I think my office informed me that the Carpathia was returning to New York with the survivors. At least, I should say, I am certain that my office informed me of that.
And when was that?
That was Tuesday evening, I should say, but I'm not aware whether they got that direct or from the newspapers.
That was Tuesday the 16th.
Tuesday the 16th.
And do you remember the hour of the day?
It was late in the evening, sometime after it was dark.
Late in the evening?
Yes.
What did you do when you got that information?
I did not do anything.
What was done by your informant?
I do not know.
Did you communicate that fact to the White Star people?
They did, or it may have come from them.
Did you make further inquiry from the Carpathia?
I asked my office whether they had any more information, and I was told that it was very difficult to get it because the Carpathia would be very busy attending to the messages of the captain and of the passengers on board.
And so you made no further attempt?
I made no further attempt because I did not think it was right to interfere in any way with the working of the wireless installation or to use any authority I might have to influence the operators or to try to influence the captain, who I think were the best judges of the situation.
And you made no attempt to do so?
I made no attempt to extract information from the ship. I was concerned only as to whether the wireless was working well or not, and I was informed it was working well.
And who informed you of that?
Mr. Bottomley.
Mr. Bottomley, your manager?
Yes.
But you yourself made no attempt to communicate with the Carpathia after that?
No, I did not.
Where were you on Thursday, the day of the landing of the Carpathia?
I was in New York City.
At your office?
I called at my office. I was at my hotel, the Holland House, most of the day.
But in communication with your office?
Yes, but in communication with my office.
Where were you when the Carpathia landed at the Cunard dock with the survivors of the Titanic wreck?
I was dining with Mr. Bottomley, whom I mentioned. I had the intention of going on board the Carpathia as soon as she reached dock, but she happened to get in sooner than we had expected. I therefore left the house where I was dining and proceeded to the dock, and we got on board.
What time?
At about 9:30, just when the survivors were leaving, or just when the last survivors were leaving.
You got on board?
I got on board, yes.
What did you do when you got on board?
I went to the wireless operating room.
And did you find the operator there?
Yes, I found the operator there.
And what did you say to him?
I said I was glad to see him and congratulated him on what I had heard he had done. I inquired after his senior operator, Phillips.
That is, you inquired of Bride about his senior operator, Phillips.
About Phillips. The operator of the Carpathia, Cottam, was not there.
Where was he?
He had gone ashore immediately when the ship arrived.
Where did he go? Do you know?
I do not know where he went.
Did you see him that evening?
No, I spoke to him on the telephone that evening.
And where was he?
I do not know where he was.
Where were you when he telephoned?
I was at the Holland House.
And what did you say to him over the telephone?
He asked me if he could give an account of what had happened, if it would be all right, if there was anything in the rules against it. I said no, certainly to give every account he could, to disclose anything he knew about it.
You told him that he could give it?
Yes, I did. I should state, if you will allow me, in regard to this question of operators, that there is a rule in these companies that operators must not act as reporters. They must accept messages from everyone in the order which they are presented, and they are bound to transmit them. But it is not encouraged that they should send stories of their own, at least. They would be dismissed if they did that.
Is it not made an offense under the law of England to do it?
It is an offense, punishable by imprisonment, to disclose the contents of messages. On an occasion like this, of course, some latitude would have been given. I think that on an occasion like this, it would have been a good thing if some report had been sent. But this was a matter that depended on the discretion of the operator, and he used his discretion in such a way that he did not send any.
He did not send out anything?
No.
Is it an offense under the laws of Germany?
It is an offense, so far as I know, to discharge the contents of messages.
What did you say to him over the phone?
He told me that a journalist wanted a story of the disaster and that he was going to be paid something for it.
Oh, how much?
He did not tell me how much. He asked if he could give the story, and I said yes.
Where was he?
I do not know where he was.
You do not know from what place he was telephoning?
No, I do not know from what place. It was very late. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning.
And what time did the Carpathia arrive at New York?
I believe it was Thursday evening. I forget the date. It was Thursday of last week.
Did you use any cipher code in the transmission of wireless messages for yourself?
I have a cipher code with my officer in London. I have none with operators.
And what is the cipher?
It's mostly comprised of Western Union words with another meaning attached to them that is different from the meaning given in the Western Union code.
Is it a registered cipher?
No, it is not. Well, that is, part of it is registered and part is not.
Do you use it often?
No, very rarely, only on rare occasions.
Did you use it in your communication with the Carpathia?
No, sir.
Or with any shore station?
No.
Did you send a wireless to the operator of the Carpathia and ask him to meet you and Samus at the Strand Hotel, 502 West 14th Street, saying, "Keep your mouth shut"?
No, sir, I did not.
If any message of that kind was sent in your name, you did not send it.
I did not send it.
And you know nothing of it.
I know nothing of it except some statements or rumors I have heard of it in the press.
Well, this was really interesting. First, I got to say, Mr. Boxhall's still in bed sick?
Yeah,
Didn't he, he testified and then he was supposed to come back?
I know.
But he was sick and he's still sick?
I want him back, though. I do remember having that vibe that we really were upset that he's sick.
Yes.
But I can understand. I'm surprised more of them aren't sick, to be honest. That's horrible conditions
catch
to
a
be
chill.
out.
Yes.
Yeah, you might
cough to
a bit
cold.
of a chill. Well, that's funny you say it's interesting. I do think it got a little interesting, and I like Marconi, and I love that he's an inventor, and it's really cool. That was quite interesting that we could do, everybody thought it was interesting, and he's just inventing this stuff. But one of my first notes is, why is he back? What are the questions?
Oh, I think there are reasons.
Oh, okay. Because I can't, maybe it's just because I have pudding brain, but I couldn't quite
First, let me say why I think it's so interesting.
Okay.
Because this is such like new technology, brand new, cutting edge, and it
true.
is taking off.
That's a good point.
18-year contracts and all this, like all these different countries, and everybody's like, "Oh, we want some, because how soon can we get ours up?" And it's so amazing.
Very true.
And,
I mean, it's like a precursor to the internet.
And he's asking, well, are you an operator? Well, there weren't any operators because it's so new. And
that's okay. Fair enough. And that's a good question.
These guys, operators on the ships, how exciting to be like, I'm going on this ship that has this thing called a telegraph, and I'll be doing it. That's so. I thought it was like, whoa.
Okay. You know what? You got me on board.
Thinking
you
cool.
got me on your side. I wasn't really thinking in perspective of the time.
It's so cutting edge, so exciting
technology. Okay.
And it's so new that Senator Smith didn't even know that a message can't be intercepted and then not get to you because I took it already.
And then I did like hearing about the alarm or the bell that they did try it, but it sometimes was going off because it's been in my mind a little bit too. Why wouldn't it? Because it's just so. You're leaving so much to chance if you only have one operator. But I can see why a ship would only want one, since the pay is pretty high in regards to other people's pay. But it just, why would you, you're leaving it alone. You just never know what could be going on. So I was interested to hear about the bell.
Because we're so on the cusp of it being new that not even all ships probably have it yet, so they didn't realize how useful it would be for
disasters.
Yes, things like that.
All right, I'm with you there. I wasn't really thinking, I guess, in terms of like the time, the 1900s.
And I think that with like him asking how many operators are on the Carpathia, how many on the Californian, how many on the Mount Temple, how many out on the Frankfurt, I think, and like Californian. Have we heard it? Yeah, they came the day after to look for survivors. And the Mount Temple, I haven't even heard of them at all.
Yes, I agree.
So does he know something about these ships that we don't know yet?
I don't know.
That's why I think that he's back to question about something afoot with these.
Okay, that's interesting. I wonder if we can get someone from the Frankfurt.
That would be great.
That would be cool, but I don't think so. Also, I'm proud of Senator Smith for throwing out the CQD, using his terms.
I jotted that down last time.
Them in there.
Got it right this time. And I was impressed that Mr. Marconi didn't feel it was his right to interfere with all the communication with the survivors, that I'm not going to use my authority and weasel my way in and
and that he really just
somebody.
Because he just wanted to get on board and check the wireless. And I was also impressed that Cottam called him to see if he could tell a story to the press.
And because I get that you can't give information
that's private
off of a message, but the whole story of the
disaster,
of them picking people up and all that, I was impressed that he asked too, until I saw that it's illegal. I thought, okay.
Marconi told him that he could, though.
Then yes, ask. I thought, okay. That was cool. And then the cipher.
I know. I like that he was I like that he was open about it, but he didn't give it all.
Yeah.
And, nope, didn't use it. But oh man, I want to see some cipher messages.
Well, what's your cipher? I'm going to tell you it's Bosco.
A equals Z. Bosco.
Yeah, I'm not telling you my account numbers or anything. No way.
And then we're ending on such a dramatic note there with the keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And then he says he didn't send it, which I don't know. I believe him.
But I don't know if... I don't think he sent it, but I think he knows about it just because there's an address, the Strand Hotel, 502 West 14th Street. I mean, where did that come from?
Oh, is that the Strand bookstore now?
I
wonder. That would be cool. That's just cool. A little aside. That doesn't mean anything. But
so to have an absolute place and address of where this took place,
the meeting is,
and then to.
Well, if he sent it though, wouldn't he send it in his cipher? If it's a keep your mouth shut situation,
right?
But only one guy knows the cipher.
Someone can undo the cipher, but. Just to the Carpathia.
Keep your mouth shut.
Meet us at the Strand Hotel. And keep your mouth shut.
Because if he didn't want to use his influence, if he didn't butt in on anything, why would he? And why would you knowing that someone could see it. Like, why would it's so obviously?
And
maybe I would, hey, want
it
to
got
have brunch
intercepted.
tomorrow?
And what could they be needing them to keep their mouth shut about?
I know. Very
That's
interesting. Very interesting last note.
It doesn't sound like there's anything that is hush about the telegraphs.
Yeah.
So I'm very puzzled.
Yeah.
I am excited that this is only part one of this interview, and I am excited
Unless
to get
it's a
back.
dressing down about, didn't one of the operators use the HE double hockey stick word?
No.
Or no, this was the fool. They called someone
Yes.
a fool. Maybe they're going to be getting a reprimand. Maybe that's what it's about.
Right, yeah. Lots of
but yeah, very good
salty language that I was not expecting in this. I'll tell you that right now. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm excited for part 2.
Okay, see you then.
Bye. As always, thank you for listening. Please be sure to let us know what you're thinking in the comments or at titanictranscripts@gmail.com. Also be sure to check out our Facebook page, Titanic Transcripts, for more interesting tidbits and general discussion.